Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to call to order the November 4th, 2024 City Council Special Meeting to order. Roll call, please.
President Laflamme.
Here.
Roy.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
Zagorowski.
Here.
Ariaga.
Here.
Brooks.
Here.
Here.
Valkir.
Here.
Crumpets.
Here.
Chomsky.
Here.
Kushein.
Here.
Labrie.
Here.
Pena Costello.
Here.
13 present.
Thank you. Participating this evening on Zoom, we have Councilor Shane Brooks. In compliance with the open meeting law, the city of Chicopee is broadcasting live and for future broadcasts this meeting on Chicopee TV. Is anyone else in the audience or on Zoom video or audio taping this meeting? Please state your name and reason for doing so. Is there anyone on the floor? Is there anyone on Zoom? Seeing none, we will move into public input. Public input is limited to 3 minutes or less. Is there anyone here for public input? Please state your name and address.
Lisa Bienvenue, 34 Everett Street. Luckily, I was checking the agendas this week and saw this. I'm assuming you guys are going to be looking for a rate increase on the tax rate. It would have been nicer if this meeting wasn't being held, if the mayor had not scheduled this meeting for the night before a hotly contested presidential election so that people would be paying more attention to this. But that's kind of the modus operandi that happens in this city, is things that you don't really want anybody looking at happens during the summer or on a meeting when no one's really going to be paying attention. Now, I hope all of you consider, when you think about the tax rates, what you're going to use this money for. Because if you're going to use this money to improve roads, if you're going to use this money to improve the schools, if you're going to use this money to improve the quality of life of the citizens of Chicopee, I get it. We need the money. However, if this money is going to be used to increase the Scrooge McDuck cash pile that we have of surplus funds, or if this money is going to be used to do more renovations of City Hall when we have things in this city that need attention, not the continued beautification of City Hall, but parks and roads that all of us use, then okay. But you really need to think about what you're doing and where this money is going to be used, because we are not seeing our tax dollars being used for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience? Is there anyone on Zoom for public input? Is there anyone else on Zoom for public input? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to close public input.
Motion to close public input.
Motion made in second to close public input. Roll call, please.
President Laflamme.
Yes.
Roy.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Zagorowski.
Yes.
Ariaga.
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
Yes.
Valkir.
Yes.
Crumpets. Chomsky.
Yes.
Kushein.
Yes.
Labrie.
I was speaking.
Pena Costello.
I
Oh,
believe
hold on a
some-
minute.
Yeah, before we do the vote, somebody just said something.
Well,
Already went this one.
Maybe they didn't hear it. I don't
no,
know.
we asked twice for public input and there was nobody on for public input.
There was someone on. It was just so fast you asked.
Please.
Yep. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Frank.
Yeah, hold on a minute, please. I saw the name, but nobody was responding for it. It may have been a glitch. I'm going to take a motion to open public input back up, if that's all right, because of an issue.
Motion to reconsider.
Motion made in second that we consider it and open up public input again. Roll call, please.
President Laflamme.
Yes.
Roy.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Zagorowski. Ariaga.
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
Yes.
Valkir.
Yes.
Crumpets.
Yes.
Chomsky.
Yes.
Kushein.
Yes.
Labrie.
Yes.
Pena Costello.
Yes.
13 yes.
Go ahead, Sue. You got 3 minutes.
I thank you, Councillor Laflamme. There was a glitch. I tried speaking a couple of times, so thank you. I saw that there was going to be a special meeting also, and I'm going to be a bit repetitive in this question. But what are the exact reasons? And again, I believe also there'll be a tax increase. What are the exact reasons for the tax increase? Identifying specifically where is the money going? What are the residents, taxpayer, voter going to be paying for? What are you going to be doing with the tax increase? And a bit more repetitive, more dollars to pay for what? Because I think, ongoing progressive city should be doing a continuum where this is tracked on a monthly basis, identifying what costs are increasing in a city, what savings are occurring, and therefore to get ahead of something. And therefore, when individuals on the council are bringing up, issues or questions, and sometimes they're just voted down for no discussion, or some wants, data to be obtained, this is a very good way of, doing an ongoing continuum so the taxpayer, voter, resident can understand what's coming ahead of us, gives all of you also what? Feedback, constant feedback, data, information, questions, amazing, okay? And again, this would be a plus because otherwise it comes up out of the blue, rush, push, or very quietly near a major election. Frank, thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Okay. Is that it on Zoom? Is that it on Zoom for public input? It is now closed. Roll call, please.
Need a motion.
Motion to close public input.
Motion to close public input.
Motion made and second to close public input. Roll call.
President Laflamme?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Zagorowski?
Yes.
Ariaga?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yes.
Yes.
Valkir?
Yes.
Crumpets?
Yes.
Chomsky?
Yes.
Kushein?
Yes.
Labrie?
Yes.
Piniac Costello?
Yes.
13 yes.
Thank you. Clerk, could you read the special meeting?
Dear President Laflamme, we'd like to move forward with our real estate tax process and have the city council review information regarding property in the city of Chicopee for the purposes of assessing real estate taxes on the property and considerations regarding the property. Therefore, pursuant to Section 13 of Chicopee City Charter, I've called a special meeting of City Council to meet Monday, November 4th at 6:30 in the auditorium at 274 Front Street to discuss the following items: A, tax classification hearing; B, set the tax rate. We appreciate the City Council's deliberation and action to set a fair and equitable tax rate. If you have any questions, please let me know. Very truly yours, John View, Mayor.
Thank you, clerk. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Laura McCarthy from the assessor's office. She's the only one that is here this evening. The other two are out and notified us. So we'll turn it over to Laura to explain the whole thing, ask questions, and then we'll do the voting after that. Laura, and please do not interrupt until she's done, and then we'll ask the question. Thank you. Make your notes. Thank you. Laura, you have the floor. Laura, is the mic on, the green light? Thank you. Just keep it close to
I
you.
do it once a year.
So just keep it like a little 6 inches.
Okay, you've been provided with a tax classification package for this hearing. This hearing is not about spending, but it's about the value of our assessed property in the city for fiscal year 25 and how it's allocated between the residential class and the commercial and industrial and personal property class. And you will be voting on a shift to set a tax rate. I'm going to go through the package with you now. The top sheet tells you the total taxable value in the city for fiscal year 25. The levy, the amount that you will be raising by real estate taxes is $108,114,221. It is $5,950,835 lower than the levy limit that you're allowed to raise under Proposition 2.5. Page 2 is a history of Proposition 2.5 and setting the tax rate and definitions. Page 3 gives you the breakdown of how our property is assessed and valued for FY 25. Page 4 shows you new growth. New growth is important because we want to know if we have more commercial growth, then we have more commercial properties paying the commercial tax rate, and we have less of a burden on our residents. You can see the difference between fiscal year 2024 and fiscal year 2025 in the chart that was provided. Our residential new growth has been stable, 9.5 million for single-family homes last year compared to 9 million this year. But our commercial growth from 2024 to 2025 went down substantially. So did the industrial, and so did the personal property. And I have further information about changes in the personal property new growth if anyone wants that information. What essentially has happened is the commercial percentage of our total assessed value has dropped from 37.7% to 34.8% over the past 5 years. But this new growth is used on the next page, page 5, halfway down the page, it's used to determine our levy limit under Proposition 2.5. So our levy limit is basically 114 million. Again, we have historically not raised the levy limit, the amount that we're allowed to raise by law. We have not raised that amount in real estate taxes. We have raised a lower amount. You'll get that on page 6, which I will come back to, but that's where you will be voting. And it shows you the history comparison of FY25 to 24. And it also shows that there's a 3 million that was applied, voted on by the city council and the mayor to reduce the tax rate. And page 7 gives you the scenario if the 3 million wasn't applied. And again, I will come back to this right before you need to vote on it. Page 8 deals with the residential and commercial exemptions that are at the option of the mayor. Once adopted, the city council at the classification hearing votes on a percentage every year. And there is more information about these 2 exemptions attached in the addendum. Next, we have the addendum, and you have information about the residential exemption. You have information as to the communities that have it. They're mostly communities that have a lot of vacation homes or apartments for like a college town. Also, it shows you the statistics that are estimated based on mailing addresses. And you can see on page 1A2 that we have 97% of our single family owned, owner occupied. It may be higher because older folks may have their bills being mailed to relatives to handle. 92% of the condominiums are owner occupied. And 80% of the 2 and 3 family homes. And again, this is based on mailing addresses, and they may be mailed, the bills may be mailed elsewhere. The conclusion of those numbers is that it's almost statistically impossible to shift and do a residential exemption in our city. The same thing on the next page, 2A, you have information about the commercial exemption. And again, statistically speaking, it would be very difficult to do it in our city because we have mostly small commercial businesses. To follow is the annual levy per year, the history. And in one of those columns on page 3A, you can see how we've been applying money towards the tax levy every year. Starting in 2016, it was $1 million. Then it went up to 2 million in 2021, 3 million in 22, 23, 24, and 25. Page 4A is another way of seeing how your average bills have changed. And on 5A, last year's rates and the average residential tax bill, which is the best way to compare city or community to community. And you can see in our area, we have the second lowest average tax bill. I'll take questions now and then go back.
Okay, we're gonna do questions. We're gonna go around, I'll watch and go around the room. We're gonna go one time, let everybody, and then we're done, then we'll go a second time, so everybody has a chance to ask their questions. So we'll start off with, Mr. Wagner first. Did you have your hand up?
Well, I did, but I thought that we were just going around and.
No, I'm gonna
Okay.
watch for the people that
Okay, all right,
wanna
yeah,
ask questions. Mr. Wagner.
Not so much a question, because I think I have a pretty good understanding of what we're doing here, but more so just a comment. Proportionally per capita, well, I suppose it's a question. Proportionally per capita, how does our residential tax rate stack up against other communities? Because I know that, some of the tax rates might seem higher, but what's,
Well, that is,
stack up against the ability to actually pay it?
well, all we have is the last page, which shows you that we're one of the lowest average residential tax bill. The rate, comparing rate isn't a way to compare, because if you, communities that have higher valued homes that are mostly over $1 million, maybe like a Granby, is gonna have a lower residential rate. It's, one way I put it is it's mathematical formula. You have a rate of 3 times 4 is your value equals 12. When your values go up to 6, your rate's going to come down to 2 to equal the same amount of income. So what the best way to look at how do we compare to other communities is to look at the average residential tax bill.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Shumsky.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have a question, and I don't know if you can answer this. So right now we send our tax bills out twice a year. Is there a way that we can possibly make that quarterly to help with the burden on the taxpayers?
Yes, I've been here a long time, as you all know. We've discussed it for many years. Most recently, it was discussed with the mayor in our last financial meeting. It would take 1 or 2 years to switch our system because we changed the way we process, when we process abatements and how we gather the information to get it out in July. We would be sending out a bill July 1st. I believe October 1st. The actual one would be January 1st and then April 1st. The actual bill on January 1st would be the largest. And then July 1st would be the same as the prior cycle.
Okay.
It's been discussed with the mayor, the city treasurer, collector about putting that into operation in the next year or two. It's gathering, how does the city do it? I don't have that at this time.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate your time.
Okay, Counselor Kushein.
I was hoping to ask the mayor this, but I'm assuming you'll know because I know you put all the work into this. It looks like, if I'm reading this right, we're looking to raise an additional $6.5 million over last year's budget.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time understanding you. Can you speak slower?
Are we looking to raise an additional $6.5 million over last year's budget, according to the increase from the 24 levy? That's what it's 6.4.
Well, on page 6, the increase in the levy is 6.4.
So we're looking at
$6,451,965.
the additional
It's
amount
on
compared
page
to last.
6.
Yeah, that's what I'm
And
looking at.
that's
So-
based on the budget and the spending that you have done to date.
Right, so we are looking to raise our budget another $6 million from last year to this.
You've already
budget.
voted on the budget. It is counterintuitive, but the budget you do in June is reflected in these numbers. So the budget, that money has already been spent, budgeted for.
Right, thank you.
But we're not proposing, the assessors are not
No,
proposing
that's why I was hoping the mayor
any
would be here
money.
for his meeting to ask him that.
But as I said,
Answered it, no.
you had voted to apply 3 million to reduce the tax rate. So the increase would have been 9.5 million versus 6.5.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
Counselor Bree.
Yes, thank you, Laura, for coming in and explaining things to us. On the tax rate, we basically need to set the tax rate to get the amount of our budget, every year. So we don't, when we set the tax rate, we don't put anything extra for, rainy day funds or ever, or, things like that. We put it towards the budget that we've voted on, and there's nothing extra.
Right,
know-
the operating budget that you already voted on.
Right, I just wanted to clear that up,
Yes,
that we're not
And I'm
putting money and we're gonna spend it on something that, might come up or might not, but, it's gotta be in the budget, so, thank you.
Mhm.
Counselor Goff. Could you make sure your mic's on
Can hear you.
and just, if you could pull it a little closer to you?
If you could explain real and personal, growth. I think you said you had some,
I'm
Real and personal growth, explain it,
real and personal growth.
please. If everybody could just pull their mics closer to her to help Laura out, it'd be appreciated.
So, in the comparison, as I said, we've been stable on the number of single-family homes that we have had from year to year. That's our new growth. If there's my house is new in Chicopee, so I'd probably say it's part of the new growth this year.
Mhm.
It went from land value of 100,000 to a house value of 400,000. So the difference is new growth. The 300,000 is new growth. We have not had new condominium developments. We will get new 2 or 3 family homes or multifamilies. New growth also is someone putting on an addition or a garage to a property. That's new growth. You can see the notes below. We have 15 new single-family houses, 4 new single families post a fire rehabilitation, 5 new garages. So we review all the building permits and we look for new growth in the building permits. Siding is not new growth, but a new garage is new growth. In commercial property, we had 2 new car washes and we had some TIFs change their percentage because they're usually on a declining percentage, so they're paying more and more taxes each year. That amount of new taxes coming in is new growth. Personal property is based on businesses in the city under state law pay personal property tax, depending on how they're organized. So, attorney's office who's not is just a limited partnership is paying on the value of the desks and lamps and computers and phones and things in the office. But a corporation is only paying on machinery. But we have corporations that are much larger, like HP Hood used to had a lot of new growth in fiscal year 24, but didn't have it in 25. Our cell phone companies, our telephone companies, and Eversource have personal property that they pay taxes on, and those are in millions of dollars. I don't know if you want me to continue.
no, personal property I noticed dropped quite a bit. And personal property is things like boats and things like that.
Excuse me.
Personal property, is it
Property?
like boats and that? It's-
Boats?
Yeah, no.
What is
No,
personal
That's why
property?
boat bills
it's-
just went out.
It's equipment in your
Computers.
buildings, your
It-
business.
yeah.
Go ahead, if you want to explain it.
Yeah. I have a list because this is what we do with Department of Revenue, actually. We get questioned on why things are changing. So, for example, Atlantis Management Group had a value of 64,000 last year. It was 27,000 this year. Here was the big one, Eversource. There are personal property laws about electric, locally assessed utilities. In fiscal year 24, the new growth was 11.5 million. In 25, it was 5.8 million. So that was a difference of 5.6 million. This is the equipment that they, and the poles, lines, conduits that they use, that they report to us, and they're required by law to report this to us. As I said, HB Hood had always been a high new growth. They were very low this year. It seemed that basically a lot of our businesses invested in property in calendar year 23, but not in calendar year 24. But quite frankly, you know, if you're a health practice and you buy new equipment one year for 500,000, you don't need to buy new equipment the following year.
No, and it depreciates in value, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Laura, that includes like small businesses that put equipment in there. I mean, whether it's, I'll use, like former Mass Mutual, all their equipment in there would be desking, that's all personal that they have to, that's what part of the personal is, correct?
And you did in the spring of 2023 set a limit at 2,000. So for your smallest businesses who have old desks and furniture and, you know, a laptop, not much, they're under 2,000, they're not being taxed. But anyone over 2,000 is being taxed, because we do have a lot of small businesses, and it adds up to a good portion of our personal property. I didn't do an analysis based on total personal property amounts. I only analyzed the changes in new growth because it was such a large number, but it had been reviewed a couple of times.
Thank you. Now we'll go to Counselor Costello.
Thank you, President Laflamme. Thank you, Assessor McCarthy, for your presentation
Mhm.
and your information. You indicated that the commercial property amount of money has decreased. Is that, did I understand that correctly? Maybe I misunderstood.
The commercial property new growth has gone down.
It's gone down.
Page 4.
Because we haven't had new large commercial businesses or industrial businesses in the last year.
If you
Okay.
look on page 4.
Yep.
Yeah. it's
I
been-
want the public to know.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I just making sure.
Okay, so it's gone down. The property that was at Cabottville and the property that was at Uniroyal, was that commercial property or was that residential property? Because it seems that the city is moving toward commercial property, say at Cabottville, that was industrial. That wasn't residential. It was employment. And now the new developer is looking at taking that. It will not be used for manufacturing, it appears to be, but it looks like it's going to be residential at 600 units. So as the city transitions to a new idea of old buildings that were once used for industrial use and employment, does that affect the commercial property growth? Because Uniroyal now, that was once all employment, people had families that worked there for years, that's being converted to residential. So we've made a decision to move from industrial employment, it looks like, I mean, I'm not sure, to residential. And a good example is right across the street. Because that's not going to be used primarily as commercial property. So as we transition our planning, will that affect our tax rate in regards to commercial growth?
Cabottville would still be classified as a commercial or industrial. I'm not sure what it's at. I'd have to check the records. It has not been changed to residential because there are not residents in there. I am not the planning director, but I don't know what use, manufacturing use could go in there. Yeah, if you're, let's say, we do have some residential properties that have been proposed that have been vacant land. So for example, I think just today there was the newspaper article about the land behind on Main Street. So that will be residential, but that would be adding value and taxes. But we need more commercial land in areas where we've had it on Westover Air Force Base or other areas where there's commercial development. If we can encourage commercial or industrial to come in, like we had Hyundai last year on East Main Street. That was a new growth. I don't know if that's answering your question.
Yeah, I'm
There
just
was a
trying to
little-
figure
a
out,
circle you went in.
yeah, as we plan for the city, for the future. And now we're being explained by you very, very well in your explanation that our commercial growth is down. But we see a big movement toward more apartments and more residential. Because again, at one time, Cabottville was never used when it first was built for residential use.
No, we had a lot of industrial manufacturing before I was in high school, but
Mm.
it hasn't been industrial manufacturing in a long time.
Right, right.
Oh.
So I don't know if all that has impacted our ability as a
Well,
city
well,
to,
I'm
for
sorry for
commercial growth.
interrupting, but Uniroyal is city-owned. So until it's developed, it's tax exempt. Cabottville is owned by a private person and until it's residential, it will stay commercial industrial.
Okay,
It's not until the property is being used as such. You just did a tax increment exemption for the development on Grove Avenue, where he's gonna put 4 units, apartments, and some commercial property on the first floor. So that's going from 100% residential to a percentage, 25% commercial, 75% residential. So, but that won't change until he has the occupancy permit.
so just as a question, and I apologize if
Yeah,
I'm taking too much time.
let's stick to, we have to stick to this year,
Yeah, yeah,
not where,
yeah.
what the city plans on doing. So please, let's stay with the
Thank you. I was
hearing
just
here,
trying to, I was
classification.
just trying to get an explanation on the commercial
Right.
property.
Welcome to come in
Thank you.
anytime.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, next up is Counselor Ariaga.
Yeah, thank you for all your work. I appreciate this. I'd more have a statement. We've had numerous conversations about the burden not falling on the taxpayers, and this shows you that our commercial growth is just not there, and it's gonna fall on the taxpayers. So every time we voted, the first thing I've said is who's gonna have to pay for this, and it's gonna be the taxpayers, and this is the proof. Taxes go up, we need things. Like comments have been said, I really hope that we are more diligent on fixing our streets and putting the money back into the city. We're so quick to rebuild things, which is fantastic, and I'm excited for it. But we also need to start being a little bit more business friendly. And this shows that we're just not growing where we need to as a city. I appreciate Councilor Mary Beth Constello's comments about the buildings, because it does make sense, and I liked where she was going with this, so I'd actually like to further that conversation at a later date also, because it does raise a lot of good questions. So I just hope you are all aware that, like I've been saying, this falls on the taxpayers.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna just speak, we're all set. I'm gonna just speak with my first time.
Motion to allow the president to speak.
No, you don't need it for tax classification. We don't have to have roll call, for that, not for tax classification.
Frank, I think Shane has his hand up.
Cool. Okay, Shane, you'll go next. I'm sorry, it's crooked, the thing there. Thank you. Go ahead, Shane.
No, sorry, Frank. Yeah, Laura, I guess the only comment or commentary I would offer is, are there underdeveloped parcels within the city? So I think about, and I know this is not a popular opinion, the Burnett Road corridor. We talk about commercial growth, talk about how do we get that up, but yet we're reluctant to develop those parcels to generate the revenue, to Councilor Arriaga's point, offset the burden on the taxpayer, the homeowner. So what do you think would be the amount of commercial growth that we would need to generate in order to at least help offset what the burden on our homeowners and taxpayers would be?
It's hard for me to say what that amount would be. I can just say that over 5 years, it's gone from a percentage of 37% or 38% being commercial value down to 34.5. Bringing in any large commercial business or healthcare business, pharmaceutical business is helpful. Off of East Main Street and the land back there that was owned by, I forget what the latest plan is, but it was owned by Harvey Industries. That's commercial. That helps.
Helps with the taxes. Okay, did that help you out a little bit, Shane?
It did, but it's frustrating to me to know that there are companies that have substantial assets like a Pilot or a Tesla that are willing to come in, and they're dissuaded from coming in because of the lack of appetite from a certain portion of the city, when in fact it would help all the residents. And it's hard for me to go back to my residents in Ward 2 and say, we're going to leave $700,000 in tax money on the table because Burnett Road or some other portion of the city doesn't really want it. And I guess that's just the frustrating part for me.
Thank you. Okay, before I go to second time, I just want to speak about this a minute, and I'm going to agree with Councilor Brooks and Councilor Arriaga. I'm looking at page 4. And this is about industry and bringing in business, and as she mentioned, it's a burden on the residential side of it. You look at 24 to 25, it's gone from 61 million to 31 million, and that includes all the commercial, industrial, and the personal property. And that's a big part of it, is the personal property of that that
Yes.
comes in, correct, Laura?
Yes.
That's a huge one, is a personal property. And, that's monies we're not going to have. So we have to start looking. And if you look at the rate right now, it's almost 2 to 1. So that's where we need to start thinking, outside the box. We're a city of Chicopee that's an old city, and we don't have a lot of land left either. We don't. And so we have to figure out how we're going to do it, live together with industry and businesses as well, because they're the ones that also don't use the school systems, and they don't use a lot of that stuff to help with the tax rate of the residents. So we don't want I don't want to keep putting it in, but we have to start thinking about how we can help the city get industrial and commercial in the city. It's got to happen, because, $30 million already, that's a big drop. That's just in one part of it. And, and I'm glad you brought up about the personal property, because that's a huge one. That costs nothing. It's in their building. It's doing nothing but giving us tax money. So we got to be very careful, and it was mentioned before. So It's just something that I'm going to look at as I move forward in my next year. Is try to find ways that we can bring business into the city, because we're going to need to do it. We don't want to burden the residents. It's what we don't want to do. And in order to help that, we need to start looking at the $30 million we're losing plus. And that's part of it. But I also have one more question for you, if I could, Laura. Let me just find it. I'm sorry. I gotta get to the page. Actually, I'm gonna I'll come back. Council Wagner will go next.
Thank you. And this is just a little bit more commentary, because this goes, I think, a little bit to my strong comments that were made in public comment at the last meeting. Perhaps my frustrations were a little bit misguided. And for that, I apologize. But this all goes back to, I represent the entire city. Frank does, Jerry does, Councilor Zagorowski does. And it's frustrating for me to see the burden that the residents are on. And the reason why I asked or made mention of what is our ability for the residents to pay is because if you look on the DLS website, if you actually look at the tax rate per capita, I mean, Chicopee's pretty high up there. Our people can't afford to keep paying these increases. And for this council to have voted in a statute that arguably has been misused in the wrong ways to hinder business development and would cause us to keep having to raise taxes on residents, for me, it's just a little bit frustrating. Because there are people in lots of areas of the city that just can't afford to pay it. Chicopee Center, Willimantic, Aldenville, it's happening everywhere. It's frustrating for me to see. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else for public input? Anyone else on the floor or on Zoom from the city council for any questions?
Just-
Councilor LeBrie, second
If I-
time.
if
Yeah,
I could-
Laura, I just
If I
have,
could just comment on.
Okay, go ahead, Lois. She wants to comment. Mr.
Comment
Wagner.
first. We
Councilor
do
Wagner.
have exemptions for people who have low income and low assets, and they should contact our office to see if they're eligible.
That's good information. Thank you. Councilor LeBrie.
yes, Laura, I just have a couple little points, maybe not questions, but normally we shift the burden 175% to the business. Do you think by doing that every year, and I know most towns do the maximum shift, but do we get calls and saying, what's your tax rate? Are you at the maximum shift or whatever, and towns that may not go to the maximum shift, do you think they're getting more, knocks on the door, about, kicking the tires, Uniroyal, for instance, other places that are empty, or just people say, well, that's what it is, and that's what it is around, the cities, and, especially Hampden County, that I looked at, the last couple of days, they're all at the maximum shift. But, I think maybe once in my 11 years, we didn't go to the maximum shift. We went to like 172 or whatever. It might have been like 157 back in the day,
There are some communities that are lower. West Springfield is 29, for last year, we were
Yeah.
3178 per thousand for commercial. And West Springfield was 29.80. It was lower, but Holyoke and Springfield were higher. But Westfield was lower by pennies, 3139.
Yeah.
I will say most of our property has access to Chicopee Electric Light, which
Yeah.
is a huge incentive for people.
Yeah.
Except for the Callaway property is still connected to Eversource, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it-
And just a point I wanted to make, commercial property, industrial property, there was, when I was doing some zoning work last week, I went to a business. They had some, containers on their property that were using for storage. And I says, are you thinking, of putting up, an addition to get rid of these, storage containers? Because we're gonna put a limit on the amount of time you can have them. And they said that they had looked at putting, you know, a $5 million addition on, but the interest rates were so high. You know, and I think that goes along with everybody who's in commercial right now. And maybe things will switch now that the rate has been coming down, you know, the prime rate. So hopefully that, you know, growth will go up. People will start spending some money. But, you know, you're in a catch-22 situation with the maximum shift. Because if you don't do it, then that's more the taxpayers have to pay. You know, so, but you don't want to scare away all the business either, but that's, you know, catch-22.
Tough decision.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, I have one more, Laura. Laura, are we all done with the electric power? Remember we were getting funding from the electric power,
We do.
quite a bit of money? The
from
towers, about the towers. You remember we were getting
We were getting a lot of
year.
new growth from the projects. They were replacing the poles and wires and everything.
right, where they put all those main towers in.
I would say
Are we all
that-
done with that process?
I would say that that's the change with Eversource.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, so that's theirs?
that was at 11.5 million and it's
Okay.
now 5.6.
Okay. I didn't know it was Eversources, but I knew it.
Yeah.
The depreciation of that was a major amount.
Yeah, Eversource is now Western, well,
All right.
yeah,
That
it's
was,
gone.
I think it was a few,
It was also Womeco.
3-4 year process.
Yeah.
Or something like that. Okay, thank you. There's no more comments? All right, I'll take a motion,
So
to
you
set the.
Go back to page 6
Oh.
to do a motion on a residential factor.
Yeah, that's where I'm at, page 6, the residential factor, and that's the middle. Last year, it was what, 1.75,
Yes.
correct, on the top right? Okay, so,
But you vote on the residential factor, which at 1.75 is 0.8133 is the motion.
so we actually looked at the common shift first, which will give us the factor, correct?
No, you need to do a vote on the residential factor.
On the factor, okay.
You need a motion from somebody.
Counselor Roy,
I have a question there. I should have asked it earlier, Laura. So what is this gonna mean for individual households as far as an increase in the tax rate? How much is it gonna average out to? Do you have any idea?
we don't know yet, we didn't set it.
If you do the residential factor of 0.8133, the average bill would increase $221.
Thank you.
Okay, that's what, okay, thank you. Does anybody want to make the motion? Need a motion to set the.
So the highest you can shift it is the 1.75.
Correct. The highest is 1.7. I
will-
can't do it, so I need someone
We'll
to.
tell, the point of information is that last year, the average tax bill increased by $265.
265?
And if you did not apply the 3 million to the tax levy, the average tax bill would go up $340 at that shift, at that residential factor.
I know. We have to start somewhere.
We're missing Jim Tillotson. because
Yeah,
always
because he
made the
would do it,
motion.
yep, he would.
One of the ma-
Counselor Balakir, please.
Okay, so we're talking about the residential factor.
Yes.
Correct.
Right, right. One point I wanted to bring up just before that is, of course, the values have gone up with the properties. So, last year, the average value was 276,680. This year, it's gone up to 283,971. So, of course, then, because of that increase, depending what the residential factor is, your taxes are gonna go up. But I will make the motion for the residential factor of 0.8133.
Motion made and second that we go with the residential factor of 0.8133. Any questions? Roll call.
Okay. President Laflamme?
Yes.
Roy?
Yes.
Wagner?
Yes.
Zagorowski?
Yes.
Ariaga?
Yes.
Brooks?
Yes.
Yes.
Valkir?
Yes.
Crumpets?
Yes.
Chomsky?
Yes.
Kushein?
Yes.
Labrie?
Yes.
Piniac Costello?
Yes.
13 yes.
And the resident factor will be 0.8133. Now we move on to the,
It's not necessary.
What's
Nothing
that?
else is necessary.
no, do we have to go and do page 8?
That. would
Exemptions,
be-
we
The
don't.
exemption, we don't have to do no more?
Previously, the documents that were submitted to Department of Revenue required a vote, but the vote would have had to take place prior to tonight. Prior to tonight, the mayor would have had to propose adopting
Yep.
the residential exemption, chapter 59, section 5C. And once that chapter is adopted, then the city council votes on the percentage of the residential exemption.
Okay,
Same thing with the commercial exemption.
so so,
So
which
there
they
is no
don't
vote
apply, but so
necessary.
we're all set the way we're doing
We're all
it,
set.
correct? Okay, just want to make sure. Okay,
No
so,
signing anymore either.
okay, when do we have to sign these? Do we have,
Years ago, everybody had to sign the vote.
we don't have to do that
You
no more?
don't have to do
Wow,
that
big
anymore.
changes.
Our
Okay.
city clerk signs a certification of the
That-
vote.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion made and second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
President Laflamme,
Yes.
Roy.
Yes.
Wagner.
Yes.
Zagorowski. Ariaga.
Yes.
Brooks.
Yes.
Yes.
Valkir.
Yes.
Crumpets.
Yes.
Chomsky. Kushein.
Yes.
Labrie.
Yes.
Tania Costello.
Yes.
13 yes.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.